Guys, Stefon Diggs just got paid, baby. A brand new contract, up to $12 million on the table. And what is the very first thing this man does with his fresh money energy? He does not post a workout video. He does not pop champagne on a boat. No, Stefon Diggs looked at that new paycheck, looked at the internet, and decided it was the perfect time to go to war with the one man who has been legally running circles around him for months. Chile. The ink is not even dry on the paper, and Stefon Diggs is already back in court filings calling his accuser a clout chaser, a fame addict, a man who manufactured a whole legal nightmare just to trend. And I need y'all to sit with that for a second, because the math on this situation is not mateing at all. Now, if y'all have not been keeping up with this saga, do not worry, because we are about to get into every single messy layer of it. The new contract. The old contract he fumbled. The defamation lawsuit that might go down as the worst legal advice any athlete has ever taken. The videos. The photos. The alleged hallway beatdown. And of course, the Cardi B of it all, because baby, Cardi has officially exited the chat, and Stefon Diggs is standing out here all by himself holding a $12 million umbrella with holes in it. Grab your tea, grab your edges, and hold on to both, because this one is a ride. And before we get to the latest filings, I need to take y'all back and lay out the whole timeline properly, because some of you are just now pulling up to this saga, and context is everything. To really understand why this new contract has the internet in a chokehold, you have to understand what the last 2 years have looked like for this man. Because this is not a story about one bad week. This is a story about a slow-motion collapse that everybody saw coming except the person it was happening to. Cast your mind back. There was a time when Stefon Diggs was untouchable in the public eye. Elite receiver. Fashion icon in the tunnel walk. The pregame fits were an event all by themselves. Every Sunday, before a single ball was snapped, the internet was already fed. And when he linked up with Cardi B, baby, it felt like a merger. Two megastars from two different worlds, hip-hop royalty and football royalty. And for a while there, it really did look like the culture had a new power couple. They were everywhere. The blogs could not get enough. And here's the thing about that kind of spotlight, y'all. When it is good, it is gorgeous. But the moment it turns, that same spotlight becomes an interrogation lamp, and there is nowhere to hide under it. Because while the public was watching the red carpets, behind the scenes, a completely different story was quietly building. The accusations from Blake Griffin did not arrive with fanfare. They arrived the way these things always do, in whispers first, then in documents, then in videos that spread faster than any publicist could contain. And suddenly the narrative around Stefon Diggs flipped from fashion and football to something far darker. The man who used to trend for catching passes was now trending for something nobody in the league wants attached to their name. And through all of it, the fumbled Patriots situation, the headlines, the lawsuits, the leaks, there was Cardi B standing in front of him like a human shield, absorbing hits that were never hers to take. Now let me tell you something about borrowed goodwill, because this is a lesson every celebrity boyfriend eventually learns the hard way. When you date a woman of Cardi B's magnitude, her grace covers you. Her fans extend you the benefit of the doubt, not because you earned it, but because they love her and she chose you. It is an umbrella. But umbrellas, baby, have owners. And the moment the owner decides she is tired of getting wet, you find out real quick how much of your dryness was ever yours. That is exactly what we are watching happen to Stefon Diggs in real time. The umbrella got picked up, packed up, and carried away to go film commercials and drop hits. And what is left standing in the rain is just a man, his lawyers, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. And the questions, y'all, the questions are the part he cannot seem to shake. Because every single time this case quiets down, something pulls it right back into the light. A filing here, a leaked recording there, a settlement announcement that nobody was supposed to notice, but everybody noticed. The story has developed a heartbeat of its own at this point, and no amount of contract news can flatline it. That is what makes this week's maneuver so fascinating to me. Because with a brand new deal in hand, with a genuine opportunity to reset the entire narrative around football and nothing else, the first move out of the gate was to reopen the loudest, messiest, most damaging chapter of his entire public life. And I have been staring at that decision for days trying to find the strategy in it, and baby, I keep coming up empty. Let me paint the picture of what a smart reset would have looked like, just so we all understand how far off the mark this was. A smart reset looks like silence. It looks like a quiet off-season, a handful of workout clips, maybe a charity event or two, and then a monster opening game that reminds everybody why teams pay this man. It looks like your lawyers handling things behind closed doors while your agent rebuilds your image in public. That playbook is old, it is proven, and it works. Instead, what we got was the exact opposite. We got fresh court filings dripping with accusation. We got the phrase media attention stamped all over brand new documents, guaranteeing that the media would, in fact, pay attention. It is like trying to put out a fire by mailing it gasoline. Somebody on that team needed to stand up in the strategy meeting and say, hey, quick thought, what if we simply did not? But clearly, nobody did. So let's start with the money, because the money is the only reason Stefon Diggs is even feeling himself right now. Word on the street is Stefon Diggs just locked in a new deal, something in the neighborhood of $10 million guaranteed, and it could climb as high as $12 million if everything breaks his way. And listen, $12 million is not small money. That is generational money for a normal person. But context is everything, y'all, because let us not forget that not too long ago, Stefon Diggs was sitting on a Patriots situation reportedly worth around $65 million, and that went up in smoke. $65 million gone, and now he is celebrating 12. I am not saying 12 million is a consolation prize, but if your bag shrinks by $50 million and your response is to get cocky on the internet, baby, that is not confidence. That is delusion with a direct deposit. But you know what? At least there is one group of people who can breathe a little easier now that Stefon Diggs is employed again, and that is everybody out there waiting on a child support payment. Y'all know the streets have been keeping receipts on that man for years. And somewhere out there, Christopher Blake Griffin is looking at this new contract like, wonderful, congratulations, now let us talk about what you owe me in court. Because that is the part Stefon Diggs does not seem to understand. Getting a new job does not erase an old lawsuit. If anything, it just reminded everybody that the lawsuit exists. Because guys, while the rest of the world was looking at the contract news, Stefon Diggs and his legal team were busy filing brand new court documents, and TMZ got their hands on them. And what Stefon Diggs is saying in these filings, baby, it is a choice. According to the docs, Stefon Diggs is accusing Christopher Blake Griffin of being nothing more than a media chaser, a man who keeps trying to add new claims to their legal battle purely to squeeze more publicity out of the situation. Stefon Diggs is basically standing in front of a judge saying, Your Honor, this man is obsessed with attention. This man is a stunt queen. This man is using my name to build a brand. And I just, okay, let me get this straight in my head, because I want to make sure I understand the argument Stefon Diggs is making here. Stefon Diggs is saying that Christopher Blake Griffin is a fame-hungry man who manufactured drama for attention. The same Christopher Blake Griffin who, according to his own lawsuit, was allegedly sexually assaulted at Stefon Diggs' home back in 2023. The same Christopher Blake Griffin who claims that about a week later, members of Stefon Diggs' circle, family and friends, allegedly beat him so badly that the internet has been looking at Stefon Diggs sideways ever since. That is the man Stefon Diggs wants the court to believe is doing all of this for clout. Clout. Baby, what kind of clout comes with getting stomped out on camera? What kind of publicity package includes leaked videos of your own humiliation? Somebody please explain the marketing strategy to me, because I went to the School of Common Sense and they never covered that chapter. And here's the part that really sends me, y'all. Stefon Diggs keeps framing this like Christopher dragged him into the spotlight. But let us review the actual record, because the record matters. Christopher Blake Griffin did not sue Stefon Diggs first. Read that again. The lawsuit that kicked this whole public war off was filed by Stefon Diggs. A defamation suit. Stefon Diggs looked at his legal options and chose, out of every option on the menu, to sue the man accusing him. He sued for defamation. He talked about lost wages. He put his own name, his own reputation, and his own dirty laundry directly into the court system, gift-wrapped, with a bow on top, and then acted shocked when Christopher mounted a defense. And not just any defense, baby. Christopher came with a countersuit, with filings, with details, and suddenly Stefon Diggs is crying about media attention? Sir, you open this door. You do not get to kick the door down, walk into the middle of the room, and then complain that people are looking at you. Whoever sat Stefon Diggs down and whispered the word defamation in his ear, I need you to know something. That person does not love you. And if Stefon Diggs came up with this idea all by himself, then baby, I have questions about the decision-making happening in that camp, because legally, strategically, optically, this was a disaster from day one. And we're going to get into exactly why the defamation route was such a catastrophic choice, because the legal logic of it is almost beautiful in how badly it backfires. But first, we have to talk about what Christopher Blake Griffin is actually claiming, because once you hear his side laid out, you will understand why Stefon Diggs suddenly wants this man to stop talking. So here is what Christopher Blake Griffin is alleging. And y'all, I want to be clear about something before we go further. I do not know Stefon Diggs personally. I do not know Christopher personally. What I know is what has been filed, what has been leaked, and what has been reported, and I am going to walk y'all through all of it and let you decide. According to Christopher's claims, Back in 2023, he was at the wideout's home, and that is where he says the NFL star sexually assaulted him. Heavy allegations. And it does not stop there. Christopher further claims that roughly a week after that night, people connected to Diggs, friends and family members, allegedly beat him up. Not a scuffle, not an argument. A beatdown that left the internet gasping when the details started surfacing. And y'all, the details of that alleged beatdown are where this whole thing goes from celebrity gossip to genuinely disturbing. Because according to the reporting around this case, Christopher alleges that the trip out to California was arranged, that airfare was allegedly booked, that there were calls allegedly made, and that the people who showed up did not just randomly decide to fly across the country and take their anger out on him out of some spontaneous burst of loyalty. Christopher's side is essentially arguing that all roads in this incident lead back to the receiver and his team. Now, this man has denied the claims against him. Let me put that on the record right now. The football star denies it. But denial and evidence are two different conversations, and this is exactly why his own defamation lawsuit is turning into a trap he built for himself. Because here is the legal reality, baby, and I need everybody to understand this, because this is the whole ballgame. Defamation is one of the hardest things to prove in American courts. When the newly paid receiver sued Christopher Blake Griffin for defamation, the wideout took on the burden of proof. That means it is not Christopher's job to prove his accusations are true. It is the NFL star's job to prove they are false. Do y'all understand what that means? It means Diggs voluntarily signed up to walk into a courtroom and prove, with evidence, that everything Christopher said was a lie. And every text message, every flight record, every photo, every video that Christopher's team has gets to be examined in that process. The receiver did not just open a door. He rolled out a red carpet for his own skeletons and invited a judge to the parade. And speaking of proof, let's talk about the word at the center of this man's whole defense, stealing. Because the football star's position has basically been that Christopher stole from him, and that everything that happened afterward flows from that. When the newly paid receiver got on social media and fired off that now infamous post, the one where he wrote that certain people are lying on his name because he got caught stealing, that was the wideout planting his flag. His legal team is now arguing in the new filing that the comment was not defamatory because, and I quote the logic here, it was true. No, baby, that is not how this works, and I need the NFL star to hear me. Truth is absolutely a defense to defamation. That part is correct. But truth has to be proven. It is not enough for Diggs to say the man stole something. It is not enough for the receiver's friends, the same friends who allegedly flew out and allegedly put hands on this man, to say he stole something. Where's the police report? Where are the charges? If this man was so certain, so rock-solid confident that Christopher Blake Griffin stole from him, why was the response not a phone call to the police? Why was there no arrest? Why was there no theft case? Because y'all, what Christopher is describing instead is a situation where he was allegedly stripped down, humiliated, and put in a car like luggage. That is not how you handle a theft. That is how you handle something you do not want on official record. And that distinction is going to follow the football star into every courtroom he walks into. And it gets deeper, because Christopher's version of events explains things that the newly paid receiver's version simply does not. According to Christopher's claims, he was not some random guy in the house. He was a stylist. He worked around clothes, around pieces, around fittings. Of course he had access to items. Of course things moved around. That is the job. And when those recordings leaked, the ones where voices can allegedly be heard accusing him of stealing, what does Christopher say on those recordings? He says he did not steal anything. He says call Stefon. Call him. Now think about that, y'all. If you are a thief who just got caught red-handed, do you scream for the person you robbed to come to the scene? Or does that sound like a man who believes the person on the other end of the phone will clear everything up? Christopher's camp has also suggested, and this is where it gets really dark, that the stealing narrative only appeared after he rejected certain advances. That is his claim. The wideout denies the underlying allegations entirely. But as a narrative, y'all have to admit, one of these stories explains every bizarre detail of that night, and one of them just does not. Oh, and here is a detail that lives rent-free in my head, baby. Christopher claims that on the very night all of this allegedly went down, the NFL star gifted him a custom-made diamond watch. A custom diamond watch. Now, Diggs' side has their version, and Christopher has his. But I am just asking a logical question. In what universe do you gift a man custom jewelry on the same timeline you claim he was robbing you blind? Make that make sense. Christopher also claims that items belonging to him, custom pieces of his own, ended up gone, and he says he can prove it. So now the stealing accusation is pointing in two directions at once, and only one of these men chose to resolve it with the legal system from the start. And spoiler, it was not the one suing for lost wages. Now, I want to zoom out for a minute and talk about the bigger picture, because this case is not happening in a vacuum. We are living through an era where the courtroom has become the new content studio, and every celebrity legal battle is fought on two fronts at once, in front of a judge and in front of the timeline. And what fascinates me about the way this particular war is being waged is that one side seems to understand that reality, and the other side seems genuinely confused by it. Think about it. Christopher Blake Griffin's team has played this entire thing like a chess match. Every filing lands with documentation attached. Every public appearance has a purpose. When he sat down on those podcasts, he was not ranting. He was testifying in the court of public opinion, calmly, methodically, building a record of consistency that is going to matter enormously if this ever gets in front of a jury. Because juries, just like comment sections, are made of people, and people respond to patterns. One man has spent 2 years telling the same story the same way. The other has spent 2 years changing strategies every time a new headline drops. You do not need a law degree to figure out which of those reads is credible. And here is the irony that I cannot stop chewing on. The entire premise of the new filing is that Christopher is addicted to attention. But who benefits from attention in this scenario? Really think about it. For Christopher, attention means the video's replay. It means the worst night of his life gets clipped and memed and debated by strangers who do not know him. It means every time he leaves his house, somebody recognizes him from the worst thing that ever happened to him. That is not a benefit. That is a burden he is carrying in public. Meanwhile, for the other side, attention is oxygen. This is a man whose entire brand, the fashion moments, the tunnel walks, the celebrity relationship, has always run on being watched. So when his lawyers stand up and accuse somebody else of chasing the spotlight, baby, that is not an argument. That is a confession wearing a costume. Let us also be real about what the contract money changes and what it does not change. Yes, $12 million is a war chest. It pays for the best lawyers, the best crisis managers, the best everything. But money cannot buy back the one thing this case has already cost him, and that is the presumption of innocence in the public mind. Fair or not, the internet has a long memory and a short grace period. Once the audience has watched the videos, once they have seen the photos, once they have read the details of what is alleged to have happened in that hallway, no legal filing on earth is going to make them unsee it. The only thing that changes a narrative like that is a courtroom vindication so complete, so undeniable, that even the doubters have to nod. And based on everything that has been filed so far, based on the burden of proof his own lawsuit created, that kind of vindication is a very, very long shot. And can we talk about the circle around him for a second? Because every empire falls the same way, y'all. Not from the enemies outside the gates, but from the silence inside them. Where are the advisors? Where is the person whose job it is to say no? Every superstar needs that one voice in the room who is not on payroll in spirit, the one who looks at a bad idea and kills it before it leaves the building. Looking at the sequence of decisions over the past 2 years, the lawsuit, the posts, the filings time to contract announcements, it is painfully obvious that voice either does not exist or is not being listened to. And that might be the most expensive problem of all, because you can hire lawyers to fight your battles, but nobody can bill you for the wisdom to avoid them. Meanwhile, on the other side of this, I keep coming back to the sheer stubbornness of Christopher Blake Griffin. Whatever you believe about the facts, you have to acknowledge the endurance. This man has been beaten, humiliated, smeared by a superstar with an army of fans, and his response to all of it has been to keep showing up. Keep filing. Keep answering. Keep standing in front of microphones while strangers pick apart his life. That kind of persistence is either the behavior of a man with nothing left to lose, or the behavior of a man who knows exactly what the evidence shows and is willing to wait for a courtroom to see it too. And the longer this goes, the more the second explanation is the one that fits. Now, let's address the Cardi B in the room, because you cannot tell Stefon Diggs' story without telling hers. And baby, this is the part where the whole narrative shifts. When this situation first exploded, Cardi B did what Cardi B does. She came out swinging for her man. She got on the internet with that signature energy, that early morning, I cannot believe y'all got me defending a grown man energy, and she went in. And normally, y'all know how this goes. When Cardi B speaks, the Barty gang mobilizes. They descend on whoever is on the other side of her sentence, and it is over. It has happened 100 times. Cardi B points, the internet attacks, and the target disappears. But not this time. And this is the part of the story that genuinely shocked me, because Christopher Blake Griffin did something that almost nobody in the history of Cardi B's internet dominance has ever managed to do. He silenced her. Not with a diss track. Not with a clap back. With receipts. With filings. With a defense so methodical that Cardi B looked at the whole situation and made a decision that I personally think was the smartest move of her entire year. She stepped back. One day Cardi was in the trenches for Diggs, and the next day, Cardi was like, enough. Let me go mind my business and enjoy my summer, and honestly, as she should. Because here is what happened the moment Cardi B took her energy off of Diggs. She got a hit song out. She got that Old Navy commercial everybody and their grandmother has been talking about. Cardi B reminded the entire internet that she is one of the last true superstars walking this earth. Think about it, y'all. In an era of micro-niche influencers and glorified ring light celebrities, Cardi B is a cross-demographic, multi-generational, stadium-filling superstar, one of the most beloved rap artists of this generation. That is the woman who is standing next to the newly paid receiver. That is the umbrella he was standing under. And now the umbrella is gone, and it is raining, baby. It is pouring. Because let us be honest about what the Cardi B effect was doing for the wideout. While he was attached to her, the NFL star got to borrow her goodwill. People who never cared about football cared about him because they cared about her. Every red carpet, every appearance, Diggs was Cardi's man, and that title came with protection. But now the receiver has to stand on his own name, and his own name is currently attached to a defamation lawsuit that is going sideways, leaked videos, stomp-out allegations, and a public that is side-eyeing every move he makes. We are supposedly going to get to see this man's pre-game outfits again this season, and I am sure they will be fabulous, but no outfit on earth is tailored well enough to cover what is happening in that court docket. Now let me break down the actual mechanics of this defamation trap one more time, slowly, because I need everybody to truly grasp how backwards this whole strategy has been from day one. In a normal dispute like this, the person in the accuser's seat has all the leverage. If Christopher had sued first, he would have carried the burden of proof. He would have needed to convince a court, with evidence, that every allegation was real. That is a heavy lift, and the defense could have sat back, poked holes, and waited. But that is not what happened. What happened is that Stefon Diggs walked into the courthouse first, put his own reputation on the table like a poker chip, and said, I will prove this man lied. And the moment he did that, every single piece of evidence Christopher had was no longer something he had to push into the light. It became something the court itself would demand to see. The texts, the travel records, the photos, the videos, all of it, subpoenaed, examined, argued over in open proceedings. He did not defend himself out of this story. He formally invited the story to move in. And this is why his own lawyer's new argument makes me want to scream into a pillow. They are now asking the court to limit what Griffin can add to his countersuit, claiming he is stretching for attention. But who built the stage he is standing on? You cannot construct the theater, sell the tickets, dim the lights, and then file a motion complaining that a show is happening. The court of law has a memory, and the court of public opinion has a photographic one. Every document in this case traces back to a decision made in his camp, and no amount of fresh legal vocabulary is going to launder that origin story. Let us also talk about the sheer emotional math of this, because numbers and filings aside, there is a human element that keeps getting lost. Whatever happened in 2023, whatever the truth ultimately is, the way this has been handled has guaranteed maximum suffering for everybody involved. There was a version of this story that ended quietly 2 years ago. A phone call, a private resolution, maybe some accountability behind closed doors. Instead, it became a public blood sport. And in a public blood sport, there are no winners, only survivors. And right now, one of these men looks like he is surviving on his feet, and the other looks like he is surviving on his checkbook. And before anybody comes for me in the comments, yes, I hear the other side. There are people who genuinely believe this is all an elaborate shakedown, that the whole thing was engineered from the start to extract a payday from a wealthy athlete. And you know what? I will not insult your intelligence by pretending that possibility does not exist. It does. It always does in cases like this. That is exactly why the evidence matters, why the settlements matter, why the fact that a building and a brother allegedly already paid out matters, why the lack of a single theft charge matters. Belief is cheap. Receipts are expensive. And so far, only one side of this fight keeps producing receipts. So as we watch this next chapter unfold, remember the shape of the story. A man got a new contract. And instead of running toward his future, he turned around and charged back at his past. That tells you everything about what is actually keeping him up at night. It is not the money. It was never the money. It is the story, the one he cannot control, the one that keeps being told by a man who refuses to stop telling it. And until a courtroom settles it for good, that story owns him. Now here is the latest chapter, the one that dropped with the new contract news. The stylist recently went to the court asking for permission to amend his countersuit, to add claims that the football star defamed him through the lawsuit itself and through things said on social media, including that post about people lying on his name. And the newly paid receiver's response, in the new filing, is essentially to say that the accuser is mischaracterizing documents, cherry-picking snippets, and engineering all of this to amplify media attention. The Whiteout's team pointed out that the man at the center of this has appeared on platforms like No Jumper and other pop culture podcasts. And to that I say, So, let me get this straight. The NFL star sues a man, Diggs' girlfriend at the time, one of the most famous women on the planet with hundreds of millions of followers, goes on the internet and questions this man's manhood, calls him a liar, essentially broadcasts him to the entire world. And then when that man goes on podcasts to clear his name, that is the scandal? That is the publicity chasing? Baby, if the biggest star in the culture told her millions of fans that I was a liar, I would be on Vlad, No Jumper, The Breakfast Club, and your grandmother's Facebook Live by Tuesday. Clearing your name after a global superstar torches, it is not clout chasing. It is survival. The receiver cannot sue a man, unleash a fan base on him, and then cry foul when the man refuses to disappear quietly. That is not how public opinion works, and it is definitely not how court works. And y'all, there is one more thing that keeps me up at night about this case. Remember, this is not Griffin's first rodeo with this man's circle. The reporting says he already reached settlements with others allegedly involved, including reportedly the football star's brother and even the building connected to the second alleged beating. Now, settlements are not admissions of guilt, I will say that plainly, but they are also not nothing. If this entire situation was a pure fabrication, a fantasy cooked up for fame, people do not usually line up to settle with the fantasist. The picture that is forming is not a clout chaser manufacturing a story. It is a man methodically closing out every piece of a nightmare, one defendant at a time. And the biggest piece left on the board is the newly paid receiver. So where does this leave everybody? Let's break it down. For the wideout, this new contract is a lifeline, no question. $12 million, a fresh start, a chance to close out his career with dignity and stack his retirement bag. But that only happens if he stops stepping on legal landmines. Every filing where the NFL star calls the stylist a fame addict is another headline, another clip, another reminder of the allegations he is desperate to bury. The smart play was always quiet. Settle, move on, play football. Instead, Diggs keeps choosing volume, and volume is the one thing his side cannot survive. For Christopher Blake Griffin, the road is long, but the momentum has quietly shifted. He has settlements in his pocket, a countersuit gaining ground, and a public that has watched him get stomped out, humiliated, and smeared, and is now watching him stand in court and fight anyway. Whether you believe every word of his story or not, the man has not blinked. And in the court of public opinion, consistency is currency. And for Cardi B? Baby, Cardi B is fine. Cardi B is more than fine. Cardi B is booked, blessed, and selling khakis to America. Whatever lesson there was in this chapter, she learned it, and she learned it out loud. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is step back, let a man carry his own weight, and go have her best season yet. And y'all, while we are here, let us talk about the court of the comments, because the audience reaction to this latest filing has been its own documentary. The moment the news broke that his camp was accusing the man at the center of this of chasing publicity, the timeline did not react the way that filing was hoping. Instead of outrage at Griffin, the overwhelming response was disbelief aimed in the other direction. People pulled up the old clips. People reposted the photos. People started threading the timeline of who sued who. And baby, when the general public is doing better legal research than your crisis team, you have a structural problem. The narrative has fully flipped from, is this accuser credible, to, why does this man keep poking this bear? And once the audience starts asking that second question, every new filing becomes content for the opposition. There is also a football angle here that nobody in his camp seems willing to say out loud, so I will say it. Training camp is coming. The season is coming. And every single Sunday this fall, when that man jogs out of the tunnel, the cameras are not just going to be tracking his routes. The broadcast might ignore it, but the internet will not. Every drop gets memed through the lens of this case. Every big game gets framed as a redemption arc or a distraction, depending on how the next filing lands. That is the tax he is paying now, a tax that did not have to exist, and it gets collected every week from September through February. $12 million buys a lot of things, but it cannot buy a single Sunday of peace, not anymore. And look, I have covered enough of these sagas to know how they usually end. They do not end with a dramatic verdict and a press conference. They end quietly, at a conference table, with signatures and non-disclosure agreements and a check with a lot of zeros, and everybody walks away pretending the last 2 years were a misunderstanding. If I had to put money on it, that is where this is headed to. The only question is how much more public damage gets done before somebody finally closes the curtain. Because every month this drags on, The price of that quiet settlement goes up, and the value of the reputation waiting on the other side of it goes down. The wildest part of all of this. It genuinely did not have to be this way. Strip away the fame and the money and the celebrity romance. And this is a story as old as time. A powerful man, an accusation, and a choice. Handle it with humility, or handle it with hubris. One path is boring and survivable. The other is loud, bloody, and televised. We all know which path got chosen, and we are all still watching the consequences unfold in real time. But now I want to hear from y'all, because this one is layered. Do you think the receiver's defamation lawsuit was the worst advice he ever got? Or is there a world where he actually proves his case? Do you believe Christopher Blake Griffin is a survivor telling the truth? Or is this man right that this is all one long play for attention? And be honest, did Cardi B get out at exactly the right time? Or is there still a chapter left in that story? Drop every single thought in the comments, because I read them all, and something tells me this case is nowhere near finished. The trial questions are coming, the filings are stacking up, and the next court date could change everything. So make sure you are locked in, because the moment those documents drop, we are getting right back into it. Until then, keep your wig secured and your tea hot. I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.